go to, and I'm very curious where you're going, because we go into one of the more interesting, low-key interesting series. One team that's been talked about a lot, the other not so much, but we have the Philadelphia 76ers going against the Toronto Raptors. John, what are your thoughts?
This is a really interesting series. I think Toronto has really flown under the radar for a lot of people this season. I can't remember what they were to start the year, but early in the year they were not looking very good, and they've sort of salvaged it in the second half. And they just have a very deep lineup. I think I saw that they have 5 or 6 players that are averaging like over 12 points a game this season. So a lot of options. Pascal Siakam too. He's been playing fantastic.
Yeah, resurgence
Um,
here after last
yeah,
year.
but when you compare them to Philly, obviously a lot of people are going to look at the star power of Joel Embiid, James Harden. Um, I'm gonna. What are you gonna say?
I want to throw out, in case I'm not sure. I'm sure you know, but in case other people don't know, for the Sixers, Matisse Thybulle cannot play in
Right.
Toronto due to their. So that's a huge deal. But go ahead.
Yeah, and that would only come into effect in what games 3, 4, and 6.
Yep.
So, um, we'll see what the series is at that point. Because if Philly goes up 2-0, then maybe it won't matter as much. But I'm gonna go crazy, and I'm gonna say Toronto wins in 7. Um, I I just don't know. And I listen, when James Harden initially came in the league for a long time, I was a very big James Harden fan. Haven't really been as much since he, just started going all over the place and whatever, all that stuff going on. But I just don't know if I can really trust him in the playoffs. And I thought that maybe him being paired with Embiid, we'd really see him just get back to the old dominating fashion that we saw back in the day when he was in Houston. But I just really haven't seen it. Honestly, I've been largely disappointed by his time there so far. It feels like every time I look at a game where he's playing, uh, he is like 4 of 18. Like he's just incredibly inefficient, throwing up shots. Maybe that changes in the playoffs. Maybe he's just trying to get a feel for what's possible in this current Philly team. But I think really they're just going to be over reliant on Joel Embiid. And I think he does have a pretty big advantage in this series because Toronto often does like to run small ball where Siakam's at the 5. And I think that he's going to be able to win that matchup most of the time. But I mean, we've seen Philly in, previous years to where Embiid can go up and put up 45, but they just don't have the pieces around him to do much. And so if James Harden isn't performing, you don't have Seth Curry anymore who can maybe step up. Thybulle's not going to be there, and he's not really a great offensive player anyway. But even then, like he won't be able to step up and make some crazy defensive plays when you're playing in Toronto. So now, can Tobias Harris step up? I don't know. And then after that, the bench is just really thin. To where, like I said, Toronto, very strong team. I think they're the better coach team as well. Nick Nurse, great coach. I mean, Doc's an amazing coach historically, but just I think the last handful of years hasn't really been at the top of his game. So I'm going to take Toronto to win in 7.
Well, John, I think you said, you said, let me just say this. You're not crazy, because I thought I was the only one to be going on a limb here. And maybe I'm going, and I thought of this before you said 7, but I got Raptors in 6. Like, I have
That
major,
actually makes more sense with the Thibault thing, but I'm
yeah.
going
I
7
mean, who
anyway.
knows? Yeah. Let me start with James Harden. I have good. Let me just say that I don't think he's the same. He may not ever be back to the Houston level. He doesn't have that same, just I guess, separation ability. That made him scary in Houston. Same thing with the shot making too. He's not. I mean, you mentioned it, and I'm sure that there's stats to back it up. But he just hasn't been as efficient driving the ball and also shooting the ball. He's been a little more reliant on the free throw line, but he always has. So yeah, that's a major concern. And also, especially the Thibault effect. Even if he is playing, really, him and Embiid are really their only plus defenders, and we know James Harden isn't a good defender. Tobias Harris is meh. Danny Green's past his time, and yeah, like you mentioned, like after the main three, uh, Harden, Embiid, Harris, like it gets dicey on like, do you really want? Can you really expect said player to step up if and will probably be likely that Harden doesn't have a good game or Tobias doesn't have a good game. So yeah, and then you mentioned coaching is you gave the edge to the coaching. I do too. I think even if they do play the small ball lineup, Philly doesn't their shooters really just don't scare me outside of maybe Furkan Korkmaz, but he's not a great defender. So like if Doc puts him out there, it's a it's a win lose type thing, and I think that the Raptors will be able to probably just collapse on Embiid if he gets the ball in the post, force someone else to beat them, and that's that. And I think that they'll be able to do so and have success. So yeah, I'm with you. I think Toronto pulls off the upset in 6. I'm not sure this. I'm not gonna sit here and declare that this might be the end of Doc Rivers, but it'll be definitely interesting to see what happens with Philly if they do get knocked out here in the first round. But they shouldn't be too upset because Toronto, like you mentioned, very good team. I mean, talk about we forget 2 years ago a couple of years ago they won the championship. They were obviously a very talented team. They had a very bad year last year, and they got a little bit lucky, because they still have most of their pieces. Then they add Scotty Barnes. Precious Achiuwa has been pretty good grab, even though, from the Lowry trade. So we both got Raptors there for the upset.